Have you ever looked at someone who speaks English fluently and thought to yourself that they just have a natural gift for languages? Have you ever watched a coworker or a friend deliver a presentation in perfect English and immediately assumed they were born with a special language gene that you simply do not possess? It is a very common thought process. We look at the end result of someone's hard work and we mistakenly attribute it to raw, unearned talent. We convince ourselves that because we did not pick up English effortlessly as children, or because we still hesitate when forming sentences, we lack the fundamental ability to ever become truly fluent. This is the biggest myth in language learning, and it is a myth that is holding you back from reaching your true potential. Today, we are going to explore exactly why consistency beats talent in learning English, and how shifting your mindset from relying on ability to relying on daily habits will completely transform your relationship with this language. When we talk about talent in language learning, what we are really talking about is a head start. A person who seems naturally talented at English probably had early exposure to the language, perhaps through media, travel, or a specific educational environment. They developed an ear for the rhythm and intonation of English earlier than others. But a head start is not a guarantee of success. In fact, natural talent can sometimes be a trap. When things come easily to people early on, they often fail to develop the discipline required to master the difficult aspects of a language. They might sound good in casual conversations, but when it comes to advanced grammar, professional writing, or nuanced vocabulary, they often hit a wall. Because they have always relied on their natural feel for the language, they never learned how to study effectively. They never had to push through frustration. On the other hand, the person who lacks this so-called natural talent is forced to build a different kind of strength from day one. They have to pay close attention to grammar rules. They have to consciously memorize vocabulary. They have to practice pronunciation deliberately. This conscious effort, while feeling slow and painful in the beginning, builds a much stronger foundation. The learner who relies on consistency understands that language acquisition is not a magical process. It is a mechanical one. It is about building neural pathways in your brain through repetition. Every time you read a paragraph in English, every time you listen to a podcast, and every time you force yourself to construct a sentence out loud, you are physically altering the wiring of your brain. This process of neuroplasticity does not care how talented you are. It only cares how often you trigger it. Think about learning English in the exact same way you think about going to the gym to build muscle or get fit. If you go to the gym once a week and work out for 5 hours straight, you are not going to build muscle. In fact, you are probably going to injure yourself, and you will be so sore and exhausted that you will not want to go back for another 2 weeks. But if you go to the gym for just 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, your body will adapt. The consistent stress on your muscles forces them to grow. Learning English is exactly the same. Binge studying is completely ineffective. If you study English for 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon and then do not look at it or listen to it for the rest of the week, your brain treats that Sunday session as an isolated, random event. It does not prioritize those language pathways because there is no consistent signal telling your brain that this information is important for daily survival. Consistency works because it tricks your brain into treating English as a vital part of your daily environment. When you expose yourself to the language every single day, even if it is just for 15 or 20 minutes, your brain realizes that this is not a passing phase. It starts to consolidate the information you learn, moving it from short-term memory into long-term memory while you sleep. The daily repetition acts like a dripping tap of water on a solid rock. A single drop of water does nothing, but if the water drops consistently over months and years, It can carve a hole right through solid stone. Your brain is that rock, and your daily English practice is the water. Talent is like trying to hit the rock with a hammer once a month. It might make a dent, but it will never shape the stone the way consistent water does. Let us talk about the emotional roller coaster of language learning, because this is where consistency truly destroys talent. Learning a language is not a straight line going up. It is a series of peaks and valleys. You will have days where you feel like you can understand everything, where the words flow perfectly and you feel like a native speaker. And then, almost without warning, you will have days where you cannot remember a basic word, where your listening comprehension seems to have completely vanished, and where you feel like you have made zero progress in the last 6 months. This is known as the intermediate plateau, and it is where most talented people give up. When you rely on talent, your confidence is tied to how easily you can perform. When you suddenly hit a wall and things are no longer easy, your identity as a talented language learner is shattered. You think to yourself, I guess I was not as good as I thought I was, and you walk away. But the consistent learner has a completely different relationship with failure. The consistent learner expects to have bad days. They know that forgetting words or misunderstanding a podcast is not a sign of a lack of talent. It is just a normal part of the process. Because their success is built on the habit of showing up, not on the feeling of being smart, a bad day does not derail them. They just show up the next day and do their 15 minutes of practice anyway. They know that the bad days are actually the days where the most learning is happening under the surface, even if it does not feel like it. Another massive advantage that consistency has over talent is in the realm of speaking and overcoming the fear of making mistakes. People who think they are talented often have a lot of ego wrapped up in their language skills. They want to sound perfect, they want to impress people. Because of this desire to appear naturally brilliant, they are terrified of making grammatical errors or mispronouncing a word. This fear paralyzes them. They will sit in a meeting or at a dinner party and stay completely silent because they are waiting to formulate the perfect sentence in their head before they open their mouths. The consistent learner approaches speaking in a vastly different way. Because they practice every day, they are intimately familiar with making mistakes. They make mistakes while reading out loud, they make mistakes while talking to themselves in the mirror, and they make mistakes while trying to repeat phrases from a listening exercise. Making mistakes is their normal state of being. Therefore, when they are put into a real-life conversation with a native speaker, the fear of making an error does not paralyze them. They are willing to sound foolish. They are willing to use the wrong tense if it means they can get their message across. And it is exactly this willingness to speak, despite the mistakes, that leads to rapid improvement. You cannot learn to speak English without speaking English. And consistency breaks down the ego and the fear that prevents you from opening your mouth. Talent often builds a wall of perfectionism. Consistency tears that wall down. We also need to address the practical reality of how language is actually used in the real world. In the professional world, in academia, and in international travel, no one cares how talented you are. They care about how reliable you are. If you are a naturally talented English speaker, but you only practice when you feel inspired, your skills will fluctuate wildly. You might be brilliant on Monday, but by Thursday, if you have not been exposed to English, your vocabulary will feel sluggish. Consistency creates a baseline of reliability. When you practice every day, your English brain is always warmed up. You do not have to spend 10 minutes trying to switch from your native language into English because you are already living in that space to some degree every single day. This reliability makes you a better communicator, a better employee, and a better student because people know they can depend on your level of English to remain stable. Let us apply this to listening comprehension, which is exactly what you are doing right now. Many learners struggle with listening because they try to force it. They put on a fast-paced movie with complex slang and expect to understand it because they want to test their talent. When they fail, they get discouraged. A consistent approach to listening is entirely different. You do not care about testing yourself. You care about exposure. You might listen to a short, clear audio clip like this one every single day. At first, you might only catch 50% of the words. But because you listen every day, your ears become attuned to the rhythm of English. You start picking up on how words blend together, how certain sounds are dropped, and how intonation conveys meaning. After a month of daily listening, you are not consciously trying to hear better, but suddenly you realize you understand 80% of the audio. This did not happen because you suddenly became talented. It happened because the daily exposure physically altered your auditory processing. To build this consistency, you must completely remove motivation from the equation. Motivation is a highly unreliable emotion. It comes and goes like the weather. If you only study English when you feel motivated, you will never be consistent. You will study for 3 days after watching an inspiring video, and then you will quit for a week when you feel tired or bored. Consistency requires you to replace motivation with discipline and systems. You need to create a system in your life where English practice is an automatic habit, like brushing your teeth. You do not wake up every morning and ask yourself if you feel highly motivated to brush your teeth. You just do it because it is part of your routine. You must do the same with English. Tie your English practice to an existing habit. For example, tell yourself that while you drink your morning coffee, you will listen to an English podcast. Or tell yourself that during your commute to work, you will not listen to music, but you will listen to an English audio lesson. When you attach the new habit to an old established habit, it becomes much easier to sustain. It is also crucial to lower the barrier to entry for your daily practice. People often fail to be consistent because they make their daily goals too ambitious. They tell themselves they are going to read an entire chapter of an English novel every day. When life gets busy and they do not have time to read a whole chapter, they skip the day entirely. They break the chain of consistency. To beat this, make your daily goal ridiculously small. Make it so small that it would be almost embarrassing not to do it. Commit to reading just 1 paragraph of English a day. Commit to learning just 3 new vocabulary words a day. Commit to listening to just 5 minutes of an English audio track. The goal is not to learn a massive amount of English in that single sitting. The goal is simply to maintain the chain. The goal is to keep the habit alive. Once you sit down to read your 1 paragraph, you will often find that you end up reading 2 or 3 paragraphs anyway. But even if you only read 1, you have still succeeded because you showed up. You kept the promise to yourself. Over time, this chain of daily successes builds a powerful sense of identity. You stop being someone who is trying to learn English and you become someone who is an English learner. It is a subtle but profound shift. When you identify as an English learner, skipping a day of practice feels wrong. It feels out of character. You have built a new self-image, and this self-image is far more powerful than any fleeting feeling of talent. This identity protects you from the distractions and excuses that life will inevitably throw at you. When you are tired, when you are stressed, when you have a busy week at work, your identity as a consistent learner will push you to find just 5 minutes to engage with the language, keeping your progress moving forward, even if it is at a slower pace. Think about the concept of compounding interest in finance. If you invest a small amount of money every month, The interest compounds over time, and eventually the growth becomes exponential. Language learning works on the exact same mathematical principle. The progress you make in your first month of daily practice will seem very small. It might feel frustratingly slow. But in month 6, the words you learned in month 1 will have combined with the grammar you learned in month 3, allowing you to understand complex ideas that were impossible before. By month 12, your progress will seem miraculous to someone who does not understand the power of compounding daily effort. They will look at your fluency and call it talent, but you will know the truth. You will know that it was just small daily actions stacking on top of each other over a long period of time. It is also important to redefine what you consider to be valid practice. Consistency does not mean you have to sit at a desk with a textbook for an hour a day. That is an outdated and restrictive view of learning. In the modern world, you can practice English while doing almost anything. You can practice while walking the dog by listening to an audiobook. You can practice while cooking dinner by putting on a YouTube video in English in the background. You can practice while waiting in line at the supermarket by trying to describe the people around you in your head in English. When you expand your definition of practice, consistency becomes incredibly easy to achieve. You no longer need to carve out a special block of time in your already busy day. You simply hijack the time you are already spending and shift the language of your internal or external input to English. This brings us to the concept of passive and active consistency, both of which are necessary. Active consistency is when you are fully focused on the language, like when you are writing an essay, doing grammar exercises, or having a focused conversation with a tutor. Passive consistency is when the language is in the background, like having an English radio station playing while you work, or following English accounts on social media. You need both. Passive consistency keeps your brain bathed in the sounds and rhythms of English, making active comprehension much easier when you sit down to focus. If you only do active practice, your brain has to warm up every time, which takes energy. If you maintain passive consistency, your brain is always warm. Let us directly address the pain points that make you want to quit. There will be days when you listen to a native speaker and you understand absolutely nothing. You will feel like all your months of daily practice have been a waste of time. When this happens, you must remember that comprehension is not linear. Sometimes your brain is quietly organizing the data you have fed it, and you will experience a sudden jump in comprehension a few days later. Do not let a single moment of confusion break your consistent streak. The person who relies on talent will hear a fast native speaker, feel stupid, and put their headphones away for a week. The consistent learner will hear the same fast speaker acknowledge that it is difficult and keep the audio playing in the background anyway, knowing that even if they do not understand it today, their brain is logging the sounds for tomorrow. The ultimate triumph of consistency over talent is most visible in the long term. Look at any adult who is truly bilingual or fully fluent in English as a second language. If you ask them their secret, they will rarely say it was because they were smarter than everyone else. They will tell you that they just never stopped using it. They watched movies in English, they read books in English, they traveled and forced themselves to speak, and they did it year after year after year. They outlasted the talented people. Talent is a sprinter. It can win the first 100 meters, but it burns out fast. Consistency is a marathon runner. It sets a sustainable pace and just keeps moving forward, passing the exhausted sprinter on the side of the road. You must let go of the idea that you need to be perfect. You must let go of the idea that you need to learn at a speed that impresses other people. The only person you are in a race with is yourself yesterday. If you engaged with English for 10 minutes today and you did the same yesterday, you are winning. You are building something that no amount of natural talent can replicate. You are building a resilient, deeply rooted command of the English language that will not disappear when you are stressed or tired. So as you finish this listening practice today, I want you to make one single, simple decision. Do not decide to become fluent. That is too big of a goal, and it relies on future results. Instead, decide to show up tomorrow. Decide to find just 10 or 15 minutes tomorrow to read, listen, or speak in English. That is all you have to do, just tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, your only job is to promise to show up the day after that. If you can do that, if you can master the art of just showing up, you will learn English. It is an absolute certainty. The math of consistency does not lie. The science of neuroplasticity does not lie. You do not need a language gene. You do not need special abilities. You just need to be stubborn. You just need to be consistent. Keep showing up, keep listening, keep speaking, and let time do the rest of the work for you.